This is Partner Relationship Management, the ultimate channel sales podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Channel Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Bird. We usually have discussions around how to manage your channel from the channel leader's point of view. They come on the show to contribute insights on topics such as how things should be handled, what's worked for them in the past, trends they're noticing, and a lot more. But we don't nearly hear as much from the people on the other side, the channel partners themselves. So we brought a couple of MSPs on the show to tell us their side. Discussions today are going to include what they think about the best practices that channel leaders are recommending and how often those channel chiefs actually live up to these ideals, and what some of their most burning desires are around what they wish channel managers would do or how they can improve what they're currently doing when managing their partners, and where you can find and recruit the best channel partners, so where they're hanging out, what shows they attend, etc. So today's guests include Tim Conkle. Tim's the CEO of The 20, and while The 20 was originally founded in 1986, they're still in rapid growth mode. I believe they acquired 13 MSPs just last year. And Tim's really been the driving force around what is revolutionizing the managed service provider and the IT industry. We also have Jason Dittman. Jason's the president of his division of Microwage. And Microwage is an MSP that specializes in managed IT services and support. And Microwage has been recognized by Channel Futures as among the best managed IT service suppliers in the world. So they're here with us today to talk about what channel chiefs are getting wrong. Welcome to the show, Tim and Jason. Guys, it's great to have you both here.
Great to be here.
So let's get into today's discussion on, the things that channel chiefs could be doing better. So let's tell us a little bit about how your businesses interact with channel suppliers, technology suppliers in the market today.
All right. So, I think really as an MSP, we really look for efficiencies with our relationships. We look at our tool sets, we look at our ability because of the way that we need to be able to support our clients and evolve our solutions. We need to be able to have really tight relationships, both from the software and hardware manufacturers, as well as providers of additional services, so that we can really have a smooth process from acquisition of each of the products and services to the end support and end deliveries to our client base. So it's evolved a lot over the last number of years in terms of being able to integrate, both distributors as well as suppliers of software tools into our own service delivery tools, our remote management and monitoring, the software applications, our professional services automation tools. So those are some of the opportunities that I think some of the channel chiefs have been talking about, and certainly an opportunity, to kind of grow and integrate better there.
Perfect. And Tim, you've got a network of managed service providers. Do you do things very similar, or is your relationship with technology suppliers maybe a little bit different?
I think it's pretty much the same. I mean, if you talk about, there's a big difference between the channel, who the channel chief is, and then the delivery of the actual product and all of those things. I think channel chiefs are typically the kind of the face in the channel. They'll get involved. One really good one that just comes to mind is Rob Ray. If something comes up, even if he sees it out on social, he jumps in and gets involved, right? Kind of his thing. I think that sets him apart from most. We've had really good luck, but we really typically try to pick first in class. And it's not bowed down by the chatter to the left or the right, because realistically, if you get on Reddit, there's not a single thing on the face of the earth in technology that's worth a damn. It's all broke. Vendors are broke, software's broke. I mean, everything's broke. And so I think if you really pull it forward to where the rubber meets the road, vendors are pretty good at delivery and stuff. I don't see that as a problem. So yeah, I would say delivery of it and all that is probably very similar. I mean, we all buy things from Microsoft, or we buy things from an Ingram Micro, or Tech Data, or Cinex. It's pretty straightforward. I find that if you're bigger, it's a little easier to get attention. So as a bigger company, and I'm sure Jason can probably mirror this, size does matter. As to what you get.
So you mentioned something interesting there, which was really more strategic, almost strategic partnering. What do you think the biggest benefits are to your business when you have kind of very strategic vendors you're working with?
Well, I'm a big proponent of, I don't want any vendor that doesn't care if I grow. So if they're not actively doing something to help me grow, I'm not actively doing anything to help them grow. And so I think it's a give and a take. I think it's a two-way street. I think there's a strategic edge to it at a higher level, and then there's tactical. Tactical is, hey, I need a new PC from Dell. Tactically, you order it and all that stuff. Strategy is, hey, we've got 7 companies coming up, end of life PCs. Let's, do the ordering of those, and typically in a QBR, getting the client to the yes of, hey, let's replace this stuff. And so, yeah, I think both pieces have to be dealt with, especially as you get bigger. I mean, it's easy when you're a little bitty IT company. And I was a little IT company at one point. It's a little tougher. I mean, you don't get the same time of day that a big guy gets. You don't. But we made it through it. I mean, if I look at the IT spaces in general, I think most vendors are very good. I could tell you a couple that's not.
Maybe we'll dig into that a little more.
No, I'm not.
So Jason, what's your approach? Do you pick strategic vendors as part of your portfolio? And you think that there is some benefits maybe regionally that you see against other people that are playing in the same space?
Yeah, I think you do have to have some alignment, have some strategic conversations, with your partners. And I think where we've seen some real good symbiosis is partners that are, I think, as Tim said, they're willing to kind of invest in our success as well, help us, with some of our live events, some of the video events that we have, webinars for our prospects as well as existing clients. We can't all go it alone. We're not subject matter experts necessarily on all the different pieces, but when we can bring some of those subject matter experts both to our live events as well as our live online events, helping, to kind of get the solution word out on all these different opportunities, it certainly helps. Our marketing budget is finite, so when we can stretch it out a little bit, I think, well, and the reality is a lot of the partners, they don't have the ability to kind of get to the ground level that we do in terms of really impacting the IT decision makers that are going to make those decisions, business owners, CFOs and what have you, so that we can really educate them, and make them understand the value of the solutions from a business perspective, and having some of those partners to be able to kind of tell their story direct, while we kind of offer the business benefit as well. That's been really impactful for us, and I think it's been impactful for our clients and prospects that have turned into clients that have attended our events. So that's, from a strategic partnership, it's one thing to just be able to, grab, here's the cheapest backup solution and here's the cheapest AV. But if you can kind of balance that out with, some of those other pieces of the customer life cycle, it really impacts, and it's quite powerful.
So maybe I'll ask this question, and Tim, just as a follow up, is that from a general perspective, well, we won't name any names. What do you think some of these channel chiefs just simply don't understand about your business?
So I think a lot of times we get hit up every day from a new vendor that either does security or backup or something. a lot of them we've never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's something to be said about, and we have a conference every year, and our vendors come to the conference. Well, when all of a sudden you have vendors coming out of the woodwork that's you've never seen it at a conference, and whoever's their channel chief or their strategist for reaching the channel thinks that it's just a phone call, and hell, Tim will drop everything and pick it up and talk to me because I've got a solution that's really, they get the sale before the relationship a lot of times. And so
Okay.
I think there's no substitute for relationship between vendor, and I hate saying vendor because a vendor is someone that sells you something, they sold it to you, and the transaction is done. That's a vendor
Mm-hmm.
until the next transaction comes. And I'm more geared towards partners that partner with us to bring about best-in-class backup, best-in-class endpoint security, all of those things. And they're there through the journey and not just at the sale. And there's a lot of companies that really get that, and there's a lot of them that really don't get that. It's kind of like Britney Spears' song, "What have you done for me lately?" You know,
That's interesting. And Jason, do you echo the same? Do you think that some channel leaders they want the transaction? We'll worry about the relationship later when you've done something for me, but they just want the dollar.
Yeah, and when we found people preaching that relationship and everything, and then you sign on the dotted line, then they disappear. It's certainly not the warm fuzzy. So just understanding, talking to other MSPs, other partners of theirs to see what their relationship, after the fact is like. I like partners that kind of treat us like like we like to treat our clients with the QBRs, the ongoing drumbeat meetings, so we can make the product better the way that we've deployed it, and potentially enhancements and things like that as well. So those certainly are a real important part of our decision on who we're bringing in and who we're keeping long term as well.
So I want to dive into today's topic, which is really to focus on the things that vendors are doing wrong with the ultimate goal of having them improve it. So here's a scenario. How often, if ever, do you establish, we'll say, the relationship with a new vendor and everything goes well? You're onboarded, you feel that you're enabled, you get proper training, and you're ready to tackle the market. How is that the more often, or is that the less often when it comes to working with a new vendor?
I honestly think that's a two-way street.
Okay.
I mean, a vendor can onboard you, but if you don't take the time to learn the product, if you don't time, and it's the mentality, and a lot of MSPs are this way. The mentality is why should I learn it? The vendor should do everything. Well, that's not how the world works that we live in anyway.
Mhm.
A real vendor, there is no onboard and then everything. It's onboarding is such a small, minute part of it. You have to onboard. Well, you're not going to make any money if I don't push any of your product out. So it's a life cycle that's longer than just. And MSPs have this bad thing about going, I like to call it scorched earth,
Mhm.
and blaming vendors for everything. Now, don't get me wrong, vendors do a lot of shit that's wrong, but I think most, and I tell people this all the time, vote with your dollars because they'll always move a needle.
Yes,
Your
they
mouth
will.
only makes everybody mad. And so if a vendor truly, truly is a horrible vendor, you don't have to trash them on the internet. You don't have to go to Reddit. You don't have to do any of these things. All you have to do is vote with your dollars. Pull your dollars away from them and find you a vendor. Now, if you go through, and I know people that have been through 10 vendors, at some point, you have to call what I like to call the mirror theology. Might not be the
Okay.
vendor. Might just not be the vendor. If 10 vendors treated you the exact same way. Again, this doesn't excuse vendors out there. And the other thing is, I think vendors, you always know when they have a really eye towards MSPs and want to partner with you because they have an MSP way of doing business. Don't ask me for 3 years worth of service up front. You want me to write you a check. That is not how MSPs work. It's the first telltale sign when a new vendor comes into the channel. They're used to doing enterprise. They're used to big companies writing these huge checks. And guess what? It's shock. But you can be patient. And sometimes we have an endpoint vendor right now that's probably not as well known, in especially around channel circles. Great product, but they came that way. And then we told them that ain't how it worked. Create a whole system around us. Now, more prevalent in the channel, but it took a little bit. It took a little bit because you have to remember these companies are owned typically by PE firms. PE firms are all about booked revenue.
That's it.
So if I book the revenue up front, guess what? My valuation goes up. And so I think there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And I think if you've got a good MSP and a decent vendor, everything typically works out really well. I don't care which vendor it is. It typically works out pretty well.
And you can have that mirror to make sure that you can see who's on the other side of it, but that you're fogging it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than a marriage. I mean, let's be honest. If a vendor ghosts someone, it's just like ghosting your wife. She's not going to be happy.
No.
And if you do it long enough, she's not going to be there, you know? And so I think it's just basic human relationship stuff that happens. And
For
if
sure.
that's there, I think everything else works itself out.
So here's a question, because I agree with you completely, is that it absolutely is a two-way street. Jason, have you ever had a situation where you feel that the relationship has been set in the right motion right from the start, but for whatever reason it seems that you're not achieving the outcomes that kind of you were hoping for? Have you ever had a situation like that come up, and any kind of idea on what kind of causes that almost failure to launch, so to speak?
Well, I think in echoing Tim's comments before, just about looking in the mirror when we bring on a new product, you have to make sure that you have the proper checklists and project onboarding, project for yourself. If it's not done properly by our own team, we're going to have stuff in, stuff out, so to speak, right? If you do have a partner, and we've had kind of missed starts for some products that we're bringing on, in cases where it's kind of the supplier of the solution being a little deficient, we take them to task. We get other members of their team to come and help us get things either reconfigured or resorted out, restart the project, restart the onboarding, make sure that the team is trained the way that they need to do, check the boxes. If our boxes are checked and the solution still isn't doing what we expect it to do, well, just double check to make sure that, bring their team in to make sure that all the boxes are checked properly so that we can kind of move it forward. So I think reputable organizations that really, they've pitched something, the solution is supposed to do something, they're going to go to bat. And we've seen time, a number of, some occasions where, just things aren't as expected. They came in, they stepped up, they helped reconfigure, and we're off to the races. So I can't say that we have any experience of any channel partners that we've had that just ghosted us after the solution was on board with us. So we've had very, very good success with that.
So question for both of you. If you look at your core offerings that you have within your portfolio and those companies that you have relationships with, if you look at them, do you feel that you're fully supported with them? And by fully supported, I mean, technically, but also from an enablement, from a marketing side, from a resource side. Is that part of what it takes to get into your inner circle, into your core offerings? Is that full support, but not just technically end to end?
I think so. Let's be honest. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you buy in life, you want it to work.
Yeah.
And so if it flat doesn't work, a vendor should bend over backwards, even if it's the MSP's fault. I mean, let's be honest. They've been playing with a product. I'll give you a great example of this. When we first went to Kaseya, there was some challenges because all of our members live in one instance of the RMN. So there were some challenges. So we talked to Kaseya, I talked to Fred Vicola, and he goes, dude, don't worry about it. They sent 2 people to Dallas. Didn't cost me anything. They sent 2 people to Dallas for like 2 weeks and helped us get all the way. Some of it was inexperience on our part, but they got it. They understood it. They're like, hey, we get it. Let's get people in there that are really, really qualified to see if they can help you. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of chatter, especially around vendors that get bought by PE firms. But in my estimation, it's the best thing that ever happened to a vendor. They have more money, they have more bandwidth, they have more people, they have more R&D. They have. I could give you 1,000 reasons why, but they are in the business of making money. It drives me nuts when an MSP says, "Oh, they want a 3-year contract." Well, so do you. And why do you want a 3-year contract? Well, because my valuation goes up and I'm worth more money. Oh, you want your vendor to not be worth anything. I mean, that's not the way it works. And this goes back to the give and take. We've had very few vendors. I've had 2 vendors. I've been doing this over 30 years. I've had 2 vendors where we onboarded and we completely aborted because it just did not work. It was a product problem and not so much a vendor, or let me flip it. Maybe the product worked fine. It's a culture problem.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
So culture, if your culture is the bend over backwards if it's not bend over backwards for the customer like mine is, you're probably going to have a problem with us.
Would you say the same, Jason? Do you feel fully supported with people in your core offering?
From like our support of the product, absolutely. There might be some things on the periphery in terms of, do all of our tool sets offer us MDF to promote their products? Quite frankly, there's some tool sets we use that I don't think the customer really cares about, from RMM and PSA. Those aren't the core pieces of the offering, and I wouldn't really necessarily expect, MDF, for us to tout that our service automation tools better than our competitor, because that's not the core piece. However, really, when we look at kind of our overall portfolio and we look at some of the security stack, we look at some of the professional productivity stack and protection stack, those are really a little bit more of the strategic partnerships, and we want to make sure that those relationships are really key, and that some of our partners are involved in some of our marketing and communications to our customers, because we never position ourselves, or I don't think a lot of MSPs position themselves necessarily as like the subject matter expert on everything, but we are a really good kind of general contractor of many things, and being able to put the solution together with many partners. Then the partners can really talk to some of the specifics around what makes their solution hum, and we can speak to us bringing together all the different pieces to make the IT support hum. So.
Have you had a situation like Tim, where you've taken someone to task of one of your core offerings and taken them to task as far as the way that they work, the way that they're running their operations, or things like that?
Oh, for sure. There's hiccups in relationships, and it comes down to that vendor management side of them making sure that they're stepping up, they're being accountable, and living the core values that we have. And like Tim said, they need to step up and realize that if the end user is suffering, our relationship is suffering. That our partners better step up in post haste and be able to get things done rapidly, or else it's going to damage relationships. So
I had something similar, kind of a different outcome. This is now, this is more than 20 years ago. So, but I was working for a value-added reseller, and we resold everything. We were one of the first compact resellers in Canada, if that starts to date this at all. But we had a vendor in our portfolio, one that we were very strong with, one that we had a full practice of the business wrapped around. Great product, solid product, great install base, but their support was terrible. It was absolutely atrocious. So we took the initiative of saying, all right, we will create a support team for this platform, and we will offer the publisher of the company the ability to resell our support to the rest of the channel. And they said, sure, but you're charging more for support than we charge for the product. Nobody on earth is going to pay more for support than they do for the product. Well, they did. And they did enough that we actually acquired the company that we were reselling. So we kind of reverse engineered the process, but it was interesting because I went from being very working direct, being able to resell multiple products. Now I had to rebuild and manage a channel that was also equally as ticked off with them as we were. We just ended up acquiring them. So really interesting approach to that. So what about the people that are kind of one step out of your core? And Tim, you got to this a little bit, but Kaseya sounds like it's part of your core offering. What happens when you come across a project, something that's maybe a little bit more complicated, and you've either gone to source a new supplier for this, but it ends up being a pretty complex product. How do you handle situations where maybe you are working with an offering you're not as familiar with and kind of not part of your core business offering? How do you support or how do you approach taking on something that may be out of your wheelhouse a little bit?
You lean on the vendor. I mean, nobody knows the product more than the vendor.
Yep.
And I find that vendors really want to be treated the same way we want to be treated. So if you'll do that, right, vendors will bend over backwards for you. They really will. Although they're not perfect, I can tell you, you can put 10 people in a room and talk about just PSAs, and you'll get 10 different ideas of what PSAs do and all the other stuff that goes with it. I think the only time we've ever changed PSAs is because we've just outgrown.
Okay.
So we've gone to different solutions because it just didn't scale. But again, I think Jason was right. Most of us are very generalist. In other words, give us the time when we make anything work. Give us the resources and we can do it faster. Give us a great vendor and we can make everybody happy. So it's a give and take. Think about this. If a vendor does not support a product, we lose the client. They lose it too. This is a circle of life. Every bird eats in this bird feeder, right?
Exactly.
So if you've got a bird kicking it out of the nest, best thing to do is kill it.
Mm-hmm.
No matter which bird it is. So.
How about you, Jason? What do you do with complex? Do you lean on the vendor? What's kind of your take on the best way to deal with a situation like that?
Yeah, there's kind of three different ways. So we're part of a kind of a national network of microages. There's just about 40 microages all across Canada. So sometimes we'll kind of canvas our microage network to see if anyone has kind of dealt with these types of solutions, and we can kind of partner, use our partner network from that side. The other is we're part of a peer group that's part of MSPs all across North America. So we will also kind of look at both our smaller peer group as well as some of the larger part of the peer group to be able to get assistance. I think having some of those not necessarily vested partners, but it's kind of a reciprocal relationship where when they have some issues, we'll jump in and help, and when we have issues, we'll ask for help. And I think just being able to kind of blend that with obviously the from the vendor side to get support from them between what the vendor says and sometimes what actually happens on the ground sometimes is a little bit of a different scenario. So having some practical experience as well as some vendor support, I think kind of balancing some of those out, that certainly helps. That has helped us in the past, being able to kind of get the gremlin out of the system fixed. So
for sure. So Tim, I want to go back to another. You gave me a great little nugget there, which is the birds eating from the feeder. So let's talk about compensation models. Do you feel that the current compensation models, now that we've seen these marketplaces come up where you might not directly be doing the billing, how do you feel the state of compensation is with vendors today?
I love my vendors. I negotiate every deal. So I would be stabbing myself right now if I told you that I didn't get good deals. Again, and I'm in a very unique situation because one of the companies I owned was sold strictly through the channel. It's a product. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of know both sides of this thing. And the reality is you can't peck at the price to the point they can't make any money, because then you become irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Because if I can't make any money, that's not emotional. That's factual. So if I'm an MSP that just keeps hammering, It's a two-way street. They know I have to make money, and they have to make money. And you meet somewhere in the middle of that. And I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem with a vendor and the way it's compensated. We do no vendor bill directs, and we do no white labeling. I've said this for a long time. Who in the world, what smart person would white label another man's liability? So why would I make somebody's product and put my name on it? So every one of my customers looked at me and said, your shit's broke. And there's no buffer in between, right? It's a very, very cool relationship with clients when they know that you use best in class. And I'm not afraid to tell them who we use. It's not like they're going to go around me and go to my endpoint company that doesn't sell to the public. And, and it's pretty short-minded. And so I was always asked, hey, can I white label? And I would just tell people, only a fool white labels another man's liability. That's a little bit to the side of your question, but we've had really, really, really good success with pricing and how we can compete in the market especially with our vendors.
So Jason, from when we look at compensation with the people that you work with, is there anything that they're missing? Is there anything that you wish they knew about their model?
I would say the vendors that are either trying to get into the MSP or trying to expand MSP really need to understand how we position the products with them. And most MSPs I talk to, they are billing per user per month. And when they're asking for 1,000 endpoints, need to commit for 3 years. That's not going to work because we're going to need next month we might need 1,100. The month after we might need 1,200, and it might dip down because of a layoff down to 1,150. So those are some of the realities of the MSP building. And I think some vendors that really aren't thinking that month-to-month way. And we all know the reasons why you want the longer commit. But the better commit, I think, for some of those vendors is the fact that MSPs aren't going to be changing their tools every month. Once we're locked in and we're happy, it's going to grow. And you might be a little fluctuation up and down over the years, but it's going to grow. And that's the model that I think, some of the PE-backed companies need to understand, that once we're locked in, we're locked in. We're not going to be changing like our underwear. So we'll be locked into a tool. But our reality is, most of the contracts we sell to our clients is month. Like it will be like a 3-year commit, but there will be some variance to what we bill them every month based on usage. So they need to be flexible, and they also need to ensure that their billing model through either their distributors or from themselves is easily ingested into our systems. I think that is one huge part and huge opportunity for the vendors that are really looking to refine the way that they do business, is how do we ingest it? How do we have that flexibility to be able to get it into our systems so that we don't spend hours and hours and hours trying to simply bill our clients, that we just know every month we're going to ingest the bill from them. It's going to go out to our clients and off we go.
I think Jason brings up a couple points that are really cool here. One is billing. So here at the 20, we've automated all our billing. Every vendor we do business with has either given us API access, and we built our own connectors to it. Because if you don't, billing becomes a nightmare. He's right. But I don't have a single vendor that does not rise and fall with me. So in other words, they can have a long-term contract with Tim in the 20, but they know as well as I do, we gain clients, we lose clients. I'm not paying for product I'm not using. I'm just not doing it. Probably one of the fundamental breaks in a vendor that we don't go with, because you have to rise and fall. If I need, and like his example was, needs 1,100 and then he needs 1,000, it's real. If a client leaves us, it's kind of back to the bird feeder, right?
Yep.
We all got to eat a little less. And so, but
as you sign up a new one, then y'all eat a little more.
That's the rise and fall. That's the rise and fall. What we hope is every MSP grows and never contracts. But we know for a fact, and we'd be lying if we said, man, we're so great we never lose a client. Now, I'd love to lie and tell you that, but I'm afraid everybody'd call me on it. No, there are times they sell, they go bankrupt, their personality conflict, new CFO comes in. There's 1,000 reasons why. And the problem is when a vendor says, all right, I want you to buy minimums of 250 at a time, and you got a small MSP that needs 100 endpoints, and all of his vendors are doing this, he's paying 5, 6, 7 times what I am just for his tools. He's not going to compete with me. And so I agree. That was a really good nugget he just pulled out right there. Rise and fall it's a beautiful model. PE firms don't like it. Why? Because they have booked revenue and they have to report. But they can do it. You just got to ask. And sometimes you have to ask with kind of an open-ended, I'm not asking. Right? I mean, I'm asking, but.
You hit on another point, too, that I just want to kind of go on as well. When we look at some new tool sets, there are cases where our whole stack of clients aren't going to jump on immediately, or it takes some time for us to kind of sell into the stack. But I think when we look at some of the organizations that that we partner with, they'll offer kind of like a ramp up period where we can start off at we're going to ingest 50 or 10, 100 licenses for the first couple months, and then go up to 250, go up to 500 over time. And I think we've had some very successful on-ramp of new products, because the reality is we're not going to take 500 licenses when we only have 100 sold. So I think that was a good strategy used by a couple partners of ours, and it just gives us some time to kind of ramp up. We get the pricing for 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 up front, but they allow us a ramp up period to kind of get.
So let's talk about other strategies that they'll use. Things like rewards, spiffs. Spiffs have been around as long as Channel has, and other type of incentives. Does that have any impact on your motivation? If there is some spiff, some reward, does that get your attention to put your focus on maybe going through that ramp up program? You picked up 10, 15, 100 new licenses, but scaling to 1,000. Does the spiff have any effect on how quickly you pour through those?
I think spiffs are just gimmicks, personally.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong, I understand why they do it, but think just to the logical side of this. Hey, I'm going to give you an extra $10 off if you buy an extra 200 of these. Whoever says yes doesn't know numbers, because then the bill comes. The give is not even close. Now, what incentives do I like? Well, we buy tons of equipment from Dell. So every year they give us like some account that I don't know exactly what it is because I don't do it. But I know I walked across to procurement and he had all these laptops. I'm like, dude, what are all those laptops for? He goes, oh, those are free laptops from all of our, whatever the give back is with Dell. And that's just buying the way we always buy, right? We need it, we buy it, we procure it, we sell it. And I think most of these spiffs, think about this for a minute. Hey, we're going to give you an extra something if you do this. Well, you're only going to grow so much. And if you haven't grown for 10 years, that spiff is not going to change that dynamic. You're still screwed. And so, again, they're gimmicks. They don't sway us one way or the other. Now, if a vendor says, hey, I'm going to give you some free money, and there's nothing attached to it outside of, man, we appreciate that you did great business with us, and they want to share some of that back with me because we helped them grow, our accounts take those checks. I had a single bank of mine say, no, we'll take them. But it doesn't, for me, and I'm speaking for myself, I'm sure Jason will have an opinion on this too. It does not sway one way or the other. I'm not swayed by gold, silver level partners and all that stuff. We're big enough that just put me in whatever the best one is and let's be done with it, because I'm not doing this thing right here to get there. Price me for that one.
Mm-hmm.
You buy my dream, I'm going to grow, I'm going to get big. Now you buy into that dream and let me in. And that's how it works. I don't want minimums. I don't want, don't give me this tiered pricing stuff. When you do this, you get this. give me the pricing. If you can make money at the top of that, you can give it to me now. Otherwise, you wouldn't make money. And so, no, you touched on a pet peeve of mine, and that's spiffs and gimmicks. But I'm sure Jason has got probably a better politically correct answer.
No, I'm with you. Spiffs are just spiffs. They are a gimmick, and I don't know that in a client relationship environment, it serves the customer very well for an outside force saying, "Oh, here's some money to sell my stuff." Right? The reason we pick stuff is that we believe in it, and we're trying to sell uptime, and we're not gonna change our uptime strategy based on a spiff necessarily. Well, we won't. Not even necessarily. We're not going to. That's all there is to it. And if there's some enhancement, we look at spiffs that we get from our partners as an enhancement to the relationship, and it's a thank you for continuing to position products. So we'll say thank you, as Tim said. The accountant won't say no. So we'll say thank you, and sometimes we'll position that for things that will help our overall staff, from a lunch perspective or other things. So there's some ways, and so to the vendors out there, in a lot of cases, those spiffs won't go to waste and it won't go unseen, because there will be some recognition for a staff lunch, and such a vendor supplied lunch for us, and they may not know that, but that is the reality. So using those dollars are still appreciated, so we don't want them to go away, but they may not have the sole purpose, aside from reinforcing that they're a good partner.
So, and this is something that Tim mentioned, and I've seen this used before quite effectively, but they're we'll say, less clear incentives. It is that check showing up. It is the accumulation, or, basically a point-based system where you're going to get free product at the end of the year. Do you think, like, for example, Tim, on that Dell example you gave us, would you like that to be really clear, or do you not mind the unclear, where you get a benefit you weren't expecting? Or is, unless you spell this out very clearly, all of a sudden giving me an incentive that I didn't know was there is just, that's not an okay way to do business? So how about these kind of unadvertised or not well defined incentive programs they put together?
I think humans in general like prizes. That's why we've got 14 holidays that people expect prizes on: Valentine's Day, Christmas, birthday. People like prizes. The prizes are not well defined. I think that's a really cool thing. So I think a vendor that gives us something out of the air means more to us than something that we feel like we had to work for and get there. Now, I do want to say there's a big difference between spiffs and rev share. I'll give you a great example of this. Microsoft gives like a 16, 17% incentive or payoff if you sell a Microsoft 365 license. It's evergreen. It happens as long as they're your client. That's rev share. So that's not a spiff. That's not a gimmick. That's, in fact, I think it's a really, really cool way of doing business, because it's consumption based. The more Microsoft 365 you sell, the more that we're going to give you this spiff. So it's no different than selling ice cream. Somebody else might have made it, but now you gave it to me. I get to mark it up. The only difference is it's pretty straightforward. Rev share needs to be crystal clear. You have to tell me. I want to know if it's evergreen. I want to know if there's a way of getting more. If you get to this point, you, instead of getting 17%, you get 20%. I want to know what those things are. I want it crystal clear. But spiff being, if you'll buy this now, even though you don't need it, we're going to give you this back, or the gimmick side of it. So there's a big difference between the two. Again, I'm a big fan of rev share. And for sure, people all the time say, Microsoft don't give you anything. Well, show me IT companies on the whole, most of them, that make 16%. Because once it's in place, you make 16% to the bottom line forever. That's an incredible payoff. VoIP, same way. You get somewhere between 17 to 25% on VoIP. It is an incredible rev share that falls all the way to the bottom. and but gimmicks,
Not so much.
don't want them to be clear. I want them to be prizes. Rev share, I want to be crystal clear.
And how about you, Jason?
I think it's great. You have a great quarter. Some partners that have just sent us a box of shirts for the team. Little gifts like that, and those little thank yous or those little appreciation things the team loves. I love. I think, to Tim's point, like gifts are fun, especially when they're not expected. I think those are really cool. Sporadic or what have you. I'm all for it.
So as we start to wrap today's conversation up, and there has been so many amazing nuggets of information, and throughout the conversation, everyone did share kind of where you're collecting information, from the Reddit groups to your MSP communities locally and nationally. Ultimately, what's the one thing you're completely tired of dealing with when it comes to these different IT vendors, and what can they do differently to get your attention? We've covered all of it, but I want to pick your number one. Jason, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think I'm going to go back to a previous point. Understanding how we do business and understanding how we need to do business with our customers from a billing perspective, from a relationship perspective, and really just understanding that, understanding that month-to-month relationship. We have the overall commitment of the client, the overall commitment of what we're going to do with them, but really understanding that at the end of the day, we're going to have fluctuation in our monthly bill. So you need to understand that that's how we have to do business.
All right. And Tim, what's that kind of one thing that you want them to keep doing, and the one thing just...
So I'll use Reddit again. I cannot stand Reddit. Somebody sent me a link one time, and I was reading some of the stuff in there, and it is all back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That means nothing. In fact, if I was a customer out there and I was looking for an MSP and I went on there and read all that junk, I wouldn't hire a single MSP on the face of the earth. Why? Because culture is important. I think the thing that drives me nuts is if a vendor, if the culture's not right? If it's not service-oriented culture, if it's a culture of just, hey, let's take all the market share we can and damn the ones we burn along the way, right? But I don't find it very often in the channel. I think the channel is pretty tightly knit. So there's not a lot that drives me nuts outside of just the back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't do it just to a vendor or a vendor straight to a thing. I've watched them both. It drives me nuts. Let's keep our dirty underwear in our own closet. And I think that should go both sides. I think that's MSPs and vendors. And I hate to say it, but you have vendors out there that throw other vendors under the bus, which I can't take either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it is what it is. But that's the quickest way to get out of my box is to slam another vendor. Well, our product's so great, and that one over there, I don't care about your opinion. You get paid to say that. And so that kind of stuff, I think, is the only thing. Outside of that, I mean, we have really good vendors, really good relationships, and over a 30-something year stint in this space, I've had two that we kind of went down the road with and then stabbed them with a rusty knife.
All right. That's a topic for another show. That's for sure. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure and honor, and I've really enjoyed the conversation today. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, guys, thank you for listening to the Ultimate Channel Sales Podcast. Please don't forget to join us next time. For more information, please visit channelsalespodcast.com. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode today, please leave us a 5-star rating. From the Apple Podcast app, just select our show, scroll down to the rating and review section, and click Write Review. And don't forget to share with your friends or professional network anyone who'd enjoy it. See you next time on the Ultimate Channel Sales Podcast.